Om Jnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
So Lord Sri Krishna continues to explain the most confidential knowledge, which he actually started to explain in the previous verse. Now, those who are well acquainted with Krishna conscious philosophy will probably consider that the most confidential knowledge is knowledge of Krishna in Vrindavan. But here Krishna is explaining his interaction with the material world, or his lack of simultaneous interaction and lack of interaction. So the ultimate object of teaching Bhagavad-gita is to take us to the spiritual world, but as in any subject, we have to start at the beginning, at a platform that we can relate to our present experience. Even the greatest scholar of mathematics in the beginning had to be shown 1 apple plus 1 apple equals 2 apples. Even the greatest scholar at the beginning, if you just put the figures on the blackboard, it won't mean anything to him. So he's taught to relate the apples, which even the child knows something about, to the abstract concept of numbers. And this is the entrance into mathematics at all levels. So here Lord Krishna is explaining his relationship with the material world. The material world is something we can understand from our present position. And he is distinguishing himself from the nature of the material world. That he is not under the control of this material world. He is above it, aloof from it, and his actual existence is not of the nature of this material world, which he has already described in the previous chapter as Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam, the abode of misery where everything is temporary. So, this is called Shaka Chandranyai, a method of teaching by which one first indicates something close and familiar before leading us to see something which is more distant, more subtle, more or less easy to understand. Just like to indicate to a child, this is the moon. You see in between the 2 branches of the tree, that round ball, that is the moon. Actually, the moon has no relationship with the tree. It is far distant from the tree. There is some relationship that Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad-gita, that Pushnami choshadha sarve somo bhutva rasatmakaha. I nourish all the vegetables and plants by becoming the moon. But it is a very subtle relationship. So Krishna is related with this material world, but not directly, because he is not material. It is essential that we, in the beginning of imbibing spiritual knowledge, clearly understand the difference between the material and the spiritual. If we don't do that, then we may talk of God and spirit and religion and devotion and all these things. Spiritual, devotion. But our concept will remain totally material. As Prabhupada points out here in this purport, we might think of God like Atlas. He's holding up the whole universe, so he must be a big, super muscular fellow, straining under the burden. Just like you see the weightlifter there. I lift it up. I let it go. So God must be the weightlifting champion of the whole universe. And we see that these materialistic concepts of God, they've taken over the religion even of people who are otherwise very intelligent. We have the painting of God in the Sistine Chapel in Rome. An old man with a long beard. Must be because he created the world. He must be really old by now. He must have a long beard. And because we're all so sinful, he must be very angry at us. So he's looking down. ready to punish. So at some point in time, when people became so much so-called rational and enlightened, some of them began to understand that this concept of God is neither rational nor enlightened. And thus they conceived of God as impersonal. So he can't be like that, not like us, getting old with a beard. But all persons we see, men, because God must be a man, right? They don't know what we know. He's a man, but he has his Shakti. Anyway, every man we saw grows old and has a beard, if he doesn't shave it, and we never heard of barbers or shaving foam in heaven. And so that doesn't say either he's like that or we can't be like that, so probably God's not a person at all. God is just love, undefined. So they realize that God must be spiritual, but they have no idea what spiritual is, so they just negate all material qualities and say that's God. So both concepts are highly inadequate. That's why from the beginning Bhagavad-gita gives knowledge that is more confidential than any taught anywhere. Bhagavad-gita is known as Gita-upanishad. It is the essence of all the Upanishads. Sarvo Upanishado Gavo is like a desire-fulfilling cow that is the essence of all the conglomeration of all the Upanishads. So the Upanishads give spiritual knowledge. They are considered the final point of Vedic knowledge. Veda means knowledge, and Vedanta means the end point or final point of knowledge. Vedas mostly give knowledge of Traigunya Vishaya Veda. They mostly give knowledge of activities within the three modes of material nature, which are meant for elevating one to the heavenly planets. That is just to entice people to take up the Vedic path. Because people want sense gratification. In the conditioned state, the contaminated state, we want sense gratification. So when we come to learn that, in the heavenly planets there is far greater sense gratification than here. When we get information from the Vedas about this, then we become desirous to go there. But to go there, we have to live a regulated, pious life. So by following the Vedic path, one lives a more civilized path than that of the gross sense enjoyers who follow no rules and regulations. He gains faith in the Vedic directions. And he accepts that this life that we are living now is not all in all, that after we die the soul will, at least indirectly accepts that the soul is going from body to body. And by cultivating a pious disposition, he has the opportunity to serve saintly persons. That is a highly recommended pious activity. That's why we see in India even today people are inclined to serve and respect saintly people or even people who pretend to be saintly. So if they meet an actual saintly person, a devotee of the Lord, then that tendency to serve him will translate into the beginning of their devotional service. So although the path of karma kanda is not in itself of much benefit, it provides an opportunity to come to a higher level. The next higher level is jnana kanda. That is the path of the Upanishads, which teach us that this world is miserable, temporary. That is Vedanta. When one understands what's the use of this, Tetam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam kshine punye martya lokam vishanti. What's the use of performing these pious activities and going to the heavenly planets and coming down again? Then he is ready. Atato Brahma Jignasa. Then he is ready for the actual purpose of human life, to inquire into spiritual knowledge or actual Vedic knowledge. After going through and being satiated with the Purva Mimamsa section of the Vedas dealing with Karma Kanda, one can come to the Uttar Mimamsa, or that section dealing with knowledge, spiritual knowledge. But the Upanishads, they mostly give vague spiritual knowledge. So the Bhagavad-gita is re-echoing the knowledge of the Upanishads. This verse and the purport that Prabhupada has given to us describes how the Lord acts through His energies. He does not have to exert Himself like Atlas, like some mythical Atlas. But being the Supreme Lord, He is naturally Shaktiman, possessed of all energies. Therefore, all His energies, they work automatically, just at His behest. Parasya shakti vividhaiva shruyate swabhavaki jnana balakriyacha. The Supreme has unlimited potencies, which are described and understood in various ways. They all act automatically according to His desire. Unlimited potencies, such as His knowledge potency, His strength potency, His activity potency. And it all goes on so nicely that He doesn't have to personally be involved in every aspect of these energies' workings. But His energies, who are within this material world, and in the spiritual world also personified as different personalities, they oversee everything for Him. So that the Absolute Truth is the Supreme Person and the Supreme Joya is actual Vedanta. But mostly scholars of Vedanta, they look through the Vedas and they can't find Krishna. He is Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto. He is difficult to find in the Vedas, but very easy to find for His loving devotees. Because Krishna cannot be understood only through knowledge. Here in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna is presenting Arjuna knowledge. But why is He speaking to Arjuna? Arjuna was certainly fit to understand this philosophical knowledge. He wasn't, being a Vedic Kshatriya, he had a background of Vedic knowledge, but he wasn't famous as a scholar or a philosopher. Just like in Croatia, there may be so many people who know how to play football and regularly play football, but not everyone's an international star. So Arjuna, he was competent to understand in understanding Vedic philosophy, but he was not known as a greatly philosophical person. Vyasadeva was present in the world at the time. Who is a greater philosopher than Vyasadeva, apart from Krishna himself? Bhishma, who was later to explain so many points of philosophy to Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was present on the battlefield also. Drona, who was a Brahmin by caste, you would expect that philosophy should be spoken to Brahmanas, the Upanishads should be spoken to Brahmanas. He was present there also. His son Ashvatthama, Brahmin. Kripa, he was present, Brahmana. But Krishna spoke to Arjuna and he explained why he spoke to Arjuna this knowledge. Bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hietad uttamam. I'm speaking this rahasya, this mysterious knowledge to you, or this confidential knowledge to you, because you are my sincere devotee and my very dear friend. Arjuna had surrendered to Krishna. Shishyaste hang shadi mang twam prapannam. Now I'm surrendering to you as a disciple. You please instruct me. So Krishna could have instructed him less thoroughly, but he took Arjuna, he presented Arjuna's dilemma not simply in the context of the situation he found himself in, but he presented the situation in terms of absolute, universal knowledge, by understanding which Arjuna could be free from all delusion in any confusing situation eternally. And not only Arjuna could be free from all delusion, but anyone who heard Bhagavad-gita following in the footsteps of Arjuna could also be free from all delusion. But that knowledge is not received simply by an academic method. It can be received by submission and surrender in a spirit of loving devotion. Because this knowledge is part of the, it is, when we say part, it's not part, it's intrinsic to, it is an intrinsic feature of the Jaiva Dharma, the very nature of the soul. The nature of the soul is to love Krishna. And with that bhakti, automatically jnana, transcendental knowledge, and vairagya, detachment from everything else but service to Krishna, become manifested. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha. What's the next line? Janyatyashu vairagyam jnanam cha yad ahaitukam. For those who engage in devotional service to Krishna, then knowledge and detachment from this material world automatically manifest. Whereas if one tries to acquire knowledge or practice detachment without devotional service, that knowledge and detachment can never be real. That's why on the Jnana Kanda, or the path of knowledge of the Vedas, one acquires spiritual knowledge of how this material world is temporary, and how the absolute truth is all-pervading, and how we are spirit souls and not the body. We have no actual connection with this material world. But that knowledge remains sadly incomplete without knowledge of Krishna. So that which is hinted at in the principal Upanishads is clearly revealed here in Bhagavad-gita. Actually, for one who has this knowledge, he can understand that the Upanishads only speak of Krishna. But then their utterances are stated in such a way that the non-devotees cannot find Krishna there. Whereas here, Krishna explains his position very clearly as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina. By me the whole universe is pervaded. His name is Vasudev, means the son of Vasudev. But it also means he who is present everywhere. So he is present everywhere, and simultaneously he is right there on the chariot with Arjuna. Not off the chariot, as that picture shows. So, later Krishna is to show Arjuna the Vishvarup darshan, the universal form, which the impersonalists very much like, because they like to conceive as the Supreme Lord as being spread everywhere. But the devotees, like Arjuna, they may see the universal form, but they like to see Krishna in his two-handed form. So the devotees understand how Krishna, this two-handed form of Krishna, holding the flute, or on the battlefield holding the reins of Arjuna's chariot, is simultaneously everywhere. And his energies are acting everywhere. And he is involved in our lives as much as we want him to be. Yomam pashati sarvatra sarvam chat mai pashati tasyaham na pranashyami sachame na pranashyati. Krishna describes how the devotee sees Krishna everywhere and in everything. So to such a person, Krishna is never lost, because he always sees Krishna. And Krishna certainly never forgets such a devotee either. Krishna is seeing everyone, but he especially looks to where is my devotee? Prabhupada once described how in the Second World War, during the Second World War, when he was in Calcutta, he had just sat down to take prasadam when Japanese bombing started. And everyone said, "Come quick, get in the air raid shelter." And Prabhupada said, "I'll take prasad first. So if the bomb kills me, that's Krishna." So he thought, I saw also the bomb as Krishna in another way. You have to be very Krishna conscious to have a vision like that, isn't it? You all remember the war here? You're all here in the war? Very frightening, huh? When bombs are dropping and anytime soldiers can rush in and shoot everyone. Even when you're walking or driving, you don't know, any moment you may hit a mine and become put under a gravestone. If there's anything left of your body to put. It requires a high level of God consciousness to think, this is God in another form. But one who has that vision, he can see Krishna everywhere. And even in greatly disturbing circumstances, he can understand that there's some plan of Krishna here. There's something very disturbing happens. He's not disturbed because he thinks, well, it's some karma of mine. I'm in this very difficult situation, something very distressing happened, but he thinks, well, I deserve that. Someone is for no apparent reason harassing me so much. I must have harassed him in the previous life. Thinking like this, which is actually it's actually the way to think, understanding the whole universal situation. One can become peaceful and understand that whatever the material disturbances may be, my duty is to serve Krishna. And for one who thinks like that, Krishna reciprocates. And Krishna helps a devotee in all ways. Now when we say helps a devotee, you may think, well, he removes the disturbances and he makes everything very nice. Not necessarily so. But he gives the devotee the understanding by which he can find the way to go on in Krishna consciousness in that situation. That's why you sometimes find people who are what we would call materially disadvantaged, who are very determined and happy in Krishna consciousness. I'm not sure about in this part of the world, but in Britain, in America, it's like the culture. If someone has some distress, then we're supposed to show great empathy with them. Oh, I'm so sorry. Or if someone gives you a gift, you're supposed to express great delight. Oh, that's so wonderful. But in Indian culture, it's not like that. In the West also, that if someone is old or sick or dying, you push them in a hospital, or an old person, to hide them away. I remember reading an account. It was a devotee was describing his, an American devotee was describing his experiences preaching among the Druze community in Israel. And he described how he went in some house and he saw there was an old man there, obviously not far away from death, lying down. And he was impressed how, they weren't trying to hide it, whereas in the Western country they try to hide it away and forget about it. Because their whole culture is, it's trying to maintain a fantasy that material life is so wonderful and so nice.
Cjelokupna zapadna kultura je u stvari pokušaj održavanja fantazije da je ovaj materijalni život divan i lijep.
Everyone's living in Walt Disneyland, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or something like that. Alice in Wonderland or something. But people who are less insane, they know that we're in this world, there is God, at some point we have to go. And they don't regard death as such a what's the word, catastrophic way, or I can't remember the word. Cataclysmic way. There's a word is connected with death actually, in such a final way that it's all over like this. In America, it's like a whole cult of half the population. People are so concerned about increasing their lifespan, and when they're getting older, they have to, get their face lifted, some operation to lift their skin up so that makes them look younger. And they go on pretending to be young when their body is going old, because they value sense gratification as the only goal of life. And sense gratification can be enjoyed better in young bodies. So even they don't like to tell, now I'm 55 years old, they'll tell them I'm 35 years old. And it's considered actually impolite to ask a woman who's obviously over 30 what her age is. Because it's considered like, something really unfortunate. Because that's when the wrinkles begin, which it means the end of youthful beauty. So you simply have to lament and apply piles of cream on or powder or whatever. You've got them too. It's pathetic how they're so much attached to their bodies and they become so distressed. But one in knowledge of God and our relationship with Him, they're not disturbed by these things. They're not disturbed, I'm growing old, I can't enjoy so much. They just think, I have to live this life and chant Hare Krishna, remember Krishna, and go to Krishna. I remember when I was younger, I was maybe in my mid-20s, so I was chanting Hare Krishna and this and that, but I recognized in myself a large degree of useful passion and foolishness. So I say, well, it's better if I get older, then I might be better. Actually, in enlightened cultures, old age is respected. It's considered something good, because it's considered that one should have acquired some wisdom, whereas young people are not given freedom to run around the streets and find different girlfriends and boyfriends every weekend. But even in married life, they're controlled, which no one wants anymore. They want the freedom to be like cats and dogs. And they consider it their right. The United Nations Charter of Human Rights. We shall have all rights to be cats and dogs in this life. We don't wait for the next life. So even when they grow up and they become old, they don't become wise. They just become older cats and dogs in human form. That's why we have to study Bhagavad-gita and understand this spiritual knowledge. We should go on growing spiritually every day. In the apartment where I'm staying, on the door they've marked some mark with some date, and then another mark with another date. It must be some child's they're growing, how they're showing the date, what height they are. So spiritually we should go on growing, day by day. They don't make day-by-day marks on the door because you wouldn't notice the difference. But if you do every 6 months, you can see the difference. So like that, if we go on imbibing this spiritual knowledge, then we should grow. We shouldn't forever remain in the beginning stage, but by serving Krishna and hearing about Him from Bhagavad-gita, then we should come to realize the presence of Krishna. How Krishna is everywhere. He really is our best friend. He is with us. He's helping us to come closer to Him. Krishna is explaining this knowledge so that we can each, like Arjuna, enter into our very real relationship with Him. Is there any question about this? There's an example I was telling how sometimes people with more distressful situation, they have so much determination to be Krishna conscious. They're very happy in Krishna consciousness. In Moscow there's a devotee, no hands. He distributes so many books. He just has some stubs here. I don't know what happened. Was it a bomb or what?
Yeah,
he was a soldier?
He was a soldier.
Yeah. There's another who's blind who goes out to distribute books. Yes, they're very happy in Krishna consciousness. Other people may think, there's such a miserable situation, no arms and can't see. But actually they are suffering more. They have all their senses, but they're misusing them in the service of Maya. Then? Anything to say? Yeah.
You were saying how we should grow all the time spiritually. So how you can know whether one is advanced devotee? Because practically I can see sometimes, I see devotees, sometimes they are not so good chanting or something, they are just, but they have all good qualities, they are year after year serving, they are very humble, but they are not, in some parts they are not so good. So
Lalit Govind's japa is not so good, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Who's japa?
Lalit Govind?
No.
I just noticed all the qualities. I don't know what his japa is like.
No, I'm not thinking about him.
Just a general example, is it?
Meditative.
Yeah.
Dakle,
We'll see the qualities of someone's japa. We'll see its quality by what they do when they're not chanting japa. As Prabhupada wrote, the result of chanting Hare Krishna is that one becomes enthusiastic to serve Krishna. Such a person is chanting Hare Krishna all the time, even if you don't see him chanting. Yeah, please.
Yeah,
the question is, what's actually happened that we find ourselves in this world? If you are eternal servant of the Lord, and why we are here? What's happened?
The often asked question. Our nature is to be eternal servants of the Lord. Why are we here? Well, you can give the answer yourself. Why are you not with Krishna?
Maybe I was not good.
You can be with Krishna right now. You want or don't want. We'll say we want, but then we have so many other desires. It is due to misuse of independence. We have the choice to serve Krishna or not to serve Krishna. If there was no choice, there would be no love. We would just be robots. That there is choice presupposes that some of the jivas will misuse it. So here we are. Welcome to the material world. What Bhagavad-gita class means, welcome to the spiritual world.
Is it possible to go directly to the spiritual world, to the Lord Krishna, without going to the Satyaloka or all these heavenly planets?
Yes, it's possible. If you want to see all the other places, you might get stuck on the way. Better not to think about them. Just think about Krishna, serving Krishna. Just like sometimes we hear devotees in a country like India say that I could really serve Krishna better in America. I think that would be a better atmosphere for my Krishna consciousness. So they may go, but they tend to forget Krishna. Now is the chance. Chant Hare Krishna, go to Krishna. You like to chant Hare Krishna? Lead Kirtan?